Well, it's not my fault. Doctor said it's very common for new mothers to have mood swings. Why are you all staring at me?
Most people see a sitcom and think of happy endings, but these actors had a much different reality involving handcuffs and prison cells. From massive fraud to violent outbursts, the truth is way stranger than any script. You see, one actor on this list actually took a life, and it was not for a TV role. 1. Bill Cosby on The Cosby Show.
And I'll tell you why. I think you were told, I don't want to compromise your integrity.
How in the world does a man known as America's Dad end up behind bars? For decades, Bill Cosby was the most trusted man in television. He played the wise and funny Cliff Huxtable, a doctor who raised his kids with love and lessons. The show was a massive hit, and it was often the #1 show in the country during the 1980s. People looked up to him as a moral leader. But not all things are what they seem, and the thing nobody tells you is that a dark shadow was following him the whole time. Starting around 2014, the world learned a shocking truth. More than 60 women came forward to say that he had given them special drinks to make them sleepy before performing unwanted physical acts on them. It was a massive scandal that shook the entire entertainment world. To put it mildly, fans were heartbroken and angry. What many overlooked is that these stories had been whispered about for years, but his fame kept them hidden. In 2018, he was actually convicted of these serious crimes and sent to prison. Even though he was later released because of a legal technicality, his reputation as a wholesome dad was gone forever. The fall of such a giant was just the beginning of a trend where the funny guy on screen turned out to be a villain off-screen. While Bill Cosby was the dad of the 80s, the next actor on our list was the cool older brother of the 90s, but his legal trouble was just as heavy. 2. Danny Masterson on That 70s Show.
To go meet, the Boston friends at the bars, and one night after, I switched and put on a Red Sox hat.
If you grew up watching the gang hang out in the basement on That 70s Show, you definitely remember Stephen Hyde. He was the cool, rebellious friend with the curly hair and the sunglasses. Danny Masterson played him for 8 years, making him a fan favorite. He seemed like the kind of guy you would want to hang out with, but the reality behind the scenes was much more disturbing. You see, while he was making people laugh on TV, he was involved in some very dark activities in his personal life. Starting in the early 2000s, several women accused him of very serious physical assaults. These were not just minor mistakes, but life-changing crimes. For a long time, it seemed like nothing would happen, and he even got a new job on a show called The Ranch. But the truth has a way of coming out eventually. In 2023, he was found guilty of 2 counts of very serious physical crimes and sentenced to 30 years to life in prison. It was a shocking moment for fans who realized the rebellious kid from Wisconsin was now a convicted criminal. It is hard to watch those old episodes now without thinking about the prison cell he sits in today. But some actors do not wait for a courtroom to show their dark side, as they let it explode right in the middle of their hit show, leading to one of the biggest meltdowns in history. 3. Charlie Sheen on 2.5 Men.
Wow. The legendary lost wallet of Alan Harper.
Charlie Sheen was once the king of TV comedy. He was making about $1.8 million for every single episode of 2.5 Men. He played a rich, single guy who loved to party, which was not very different from his real life. But the thing nobody tells you is how quickly a life of luxury can turn into a complete disaster. What many overlooked is that his issues with illegal substances and domestic violence had been bubbling under the surface for a long time. In 2011, everything fell apart in a very public way. He started giving strange interviews where he talked about having tiger blood and being a winner while attacking the creator of his show. It was a wild time in pop culture, but underneath the funny catchphrases was a man struggling with serious problems. He had multiple run-ins with the law regarding his treatment of women and his use of illegal powders. Eventually, he was fired from his own show, which was a huge deal at the time. He went from being the highest-paid actor to a cautionary tale about fame and bad choices. His story is a reminder that money cannot fix everything, and sometimes it only makes the problems bigger. While Charlie Sheen's career ended with a bang, our next actress saw her entire legacy vanish because of one single social media post that the world could not ignore. 4. Roseanne Barr on Roseanne.
Paperclip, Operation Paperclip, right? Oh
don't
my
think I
God,
do.
Dr.
The red
Drew!
pilling of
Roseanne Barr was a pioneer for funny women on television. Her show, Roseanne, was a huge success because it showed a real working-class family that struggled with money and life. After being off the air for many years, the show came back in 2018 and was an instant hit again. It seemed like she was back on top of the world. But not all things are what they seem, and her comeback lasted only a very short time. One night, she posted a very offensive and racist tweet about a former government official. The backlash was immediate and massive. Even though she tried to say it was a mistake caused by sleep medicine, the network did not listen. They canceled her hit show the very next day, even though it was making them a lot of money. It was a rare moment where a network chose to do the right thing over making a profit. She was written out of her own show, and the rest of the cast continued without her on a new show called The Conners. She went from being a TV icon to someone that most people did not want to work with anymore. But not all scandals are about what you say. Some are about how much money you are willing to pay to get your kids ahead, which brings us to a very famous aunt. 5. Lori Loughlin on Full House.
I'm an expectant mother, not a jumbo jet.
Please, the baby can pick up your sarcasm.
What are you talking about?
Everyone loved Aunt Becky on Full House. She was the kind, smart, and beautiful wife of Uncle Jesse, who always gave the best advice. Lori Loughlin seemed to be just as perfect in real life, often playing the lead in many feel-good holiday movies. That is why the world was so shocked in 2019 when her name appeared in the news for a massive fraud case. You see, she and her husband were caught in a huge scandal involving college admissions. They were accused of paying $500,000 in bribes to get their 2 daughters into a top university. They even took fake photos to make it look like their daughters were on the rowing team, even though they had never done the sport. To put it mildly, people were furious that rich parents were cheating the system. What many overlooked is that she initially fought the charges, but eventually she had to admit she was wrong. She spent 2 months in a federal prison and had to pay a large fine of $150,000. It was a huge fall from grace for a woman who was seen as the ultimate TV mom. But while she was paying for college, the next actor on our list was dealing with a much more dangerous situation involving a secret life of smuggling illegal items. 6. Tim Allen on Home Improvement.
Should be a little bit more difficult to discern, Al. Might have to take a big old whiff of this thing to figure out what it is.
Tim Allen is a household name thanks to Home Improvement and the Toy Story movies. He is the ultimate funny dad who loves tools and cars. But there is a secret in his past that many fans do not know about. Long before he was a star, he was living a very different life. In 1978, he was arrested at an airport in Michigan for having a very large amount of an illegal white powder. To be specific, he had over 650 grams of it, which is a very serious crime in the United States. At the time, he was facing the possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison. To save himself, he agreed to give the police information about other people involved in the illegal business. Because of his help, his sentence was shortened, and he ended up serving about 2.5 years in a federal prison. It is amazing to think that a man who was once a smuggler became one of the biggest stars in the world. He used his time in prison to rethink his life and turn to comedy, which eventually led to his massive success. He managed to turn his life around, But not everyone on a hit sitcom is able to keep their personal struggles from ruining the show, as one actress found out when her behavior became too much for the crew to handle. 7. Brett Butler on Grace Under Fire.
I really wouldn't. I could not enjoy anything good in my life if I actually got off on resentment, so to speak. No.
In the mid-90s, Brett Butler was one of the biggest stars on TV. Her show, Grace Under Fire, was about a single mom trying to make it on her own, and it was very popular. But behind the scenes, things were falling apart. The thing nobody tells you is that the star of the show was struggling with a very serious addiction to illegal pills. This led to her being very difficult to work with, often fighting with the writers and the other actors. The tension on the set became so bad that the show had to be shut down multiple times so she could go get help. Eventually, the network had enough, and they canceled the show, even though it still had good ratings. What many overlooked is that she went from being a multimillionaire to being nearly homeless in a very short amount of time. It was a tragic example of how fast fame can disappear when you are fighting your own demons. She eventually got healthy and returned to acting in smaller roles, but she never reached that level of stardom again. Her story is a sad one, but it is not the only tragedy from a popular 90s show. Another actress from a different hit series faced a much darker and more permanent ending to her career after multiple run-ins with the police. 8. Lisa Robin Kelly on That 70s Show.
I think it all hit us now that we're like, wow, this has been an amazing 8 years.
We already talked about Danny Mast, her son, from That 70s Show, but he was not the only one on that set with a troubled life. Lisa Robin Kelly played Eric's mean older sister Lori, and she was perfect in the role. However, she was replaced after a few seasons, and fans wondered why. The truth is that her personal life was a mess of legal trouble and health issues. She was arrested multiple times for driving under the influence and for domestic disputes with her partners. Her mugshots became famous on the internet, showing a woman who looked very different from the bright star we saw on TV. To put it mildly, she was in a downward spiral that she could not stop. Sadly, she passed away in 2013 while staying at a place meant to help people with their addictions. It was a heartbreaking end for someone who had so much talent and potential. Her life serves as a dark reminder of the pressures of Hollywood and how they can affect young stars. While her struggles were mostly personal, our next actor faced accusations of being a bully on the set of a very modern and popular show, leading to a lot of bad feelings. 9. Jeffrey Tambor on Arrested Development.
Right, let alone in the golden years.
Jeffrey Tambor is a very talented actor who has been in many funny shows, including the cult classic Arrested Development. He played the wacky father, George Bluth, and he was hilarious. Later, he starred in a show called Transparent, where he won many awards. But not all things are what they seem, and his career took a major hit when people he worked with started to speak up. He was accused of acting in ways that were not professional and made others feel unsafe. Specifically, 2 women who worked with him accused him of unwanted physical contact and harassment. While he denied the most serious claims, he did admit that he could be very difficult and mean on set. Even his co-stars from Arrested Development talked about a time when he blew up at an actress in a very scary way. Because of these reports, he was let go from his show, and his reputation was badly damaged. It showed that even if you are a great actor, you cannot treat the people around you with disrespect. It seems like being a difficult boss is a common theme, because the next actor on our list also had a lot of trouble with the people he worked with on a very funny show about a family in the 80s. 10. Jeff Garlin on The Goldbergs.
What's with you always ordering for me?
I know what you like.
And I don't? I'll order my own damn meal, thank you.
Jeff Garlin played the loud but lovable dad on The Goldbergs for many years. He was also a big part of the show Curb Your Enthusiasm. He has a very big personality, but that personality caused a lot of problems behind the scenes. In 2021, news broke that he was being investigated for his behavior on the set of The Goldbergs. People who worked there said he made them feel very uncomfortable with his language and his physical actions. He tried to explain it by saying he was just being a comedian and that he was a touchy person, but many workers did not find it funny. They felt it was a hostile place to work. Eventually, he and the show decided to part ways. They even had to use digital tricks to put his face on other actors' bodies to finish his scenes, which looked very strange to the viewers. He was eventually written out of the show entirely. It was a messy end to a long-running role, proving that what is considered a joke to one person might be harassment to another. From a dad on a family show to a star on a kids' network, the crimes get much more serious as we look at a man who was supposed to be a role model for children. 11. Stowe Knee West, more land on Andy Mack.
He was cleaning his service revolver and he forgot to unload it first. OMG, is he okay?
Andy Mack was a very popular show on the Disney Channel, known for being groundbreaking and sweet. Stowe Knee West, Moreland played the grandfather on the show, a kind man who was a big part of the family. However, in 2018, the real-life actor was arrested for something truly terrible. He was caught by the police for trying to meet with a minor for illegal adult activities. You see, he had been talking to someone he thought was a young person online, not knowing it was actually the police. Disney fired him immediately and removed his character from the show. He was eventually sentenced to serve 2 years in prison, followed by many years of supervision. It was a huge shock to the young fans and their parents who trusted him as a safe person on their favorite show. To put it mildly, it was one of the darkest scandals in the history of the Disney Channel. It serves as a scary reminder that you truly never know who someone is just by seeing them on a TV screen. While he was a grandfather on screen, our next star was a beloved child actor who grew up to face a long list of legal troubles that left fans very worried. 12. Orlando Brown on That Is. So Raven...
Damn, I wish I knew him, because he gonna look at me like, damn, he don't know me?
Orlando Brown was a huge star for Disney in the early 2000s. He played Eddie Thomas on That Is So Raven, the best friend who was always there for a laugh. He was talented, funny, and seemed to have a bright future. But as he got older, things took a very dark turn. Over the last 10 years, he has been arrested many times for various crimes, including domestic battery and having illegal substances. What many overlooked is how much his health seemed to be failing during this time. He appeared in several interviews where he made very strange and scary claims about other celebrities, which made many people think he needed serious help. His legal issues kept growing, and he spent a lot of time in and out of jail. It is a very sad story because he was so loved by a generation of kids. Seeing him struggle so much in public has been hard for his former fans to watch. He went from being a shining star to a man who is often in the news for all the wrong reasons. But while his story is sad, the next one is truly disturbing, involving a young actor from a popular musical show who was hiding a secret that horrified the world. 13. Mark Salling on Glee.
Thinking about pursuing a career in music, that it's no easy road, you know.
Glee was a massive hit show that was all about music and fitting in. Mark Salling played Puck, the tough football player with a secret heart of gold. He became a big star and was loved by millions of fans. But in 2015, the police raided his home and found something that no one expected. They found thousands of illegal images and videos of children on his computer. You see, the person everyone thought was a cool guy was actually involved in a very serious and evil crime. He pleaded guilty to the charges and was facing several years in a federal prison. However, before he could be sentenced, he decided to end his own life in early 2018. It was a dark and tragic end to a story that had already become a nightmare. The cast and fans of the show were left in shock, struggling to balance their love for the show with the horrible truth about one of its main stars. It remains one of the most unsettling stories in Hollywood history. The world of musical TV was changed forever by that scandal, but our next actor shows that even legends from the 70s can have a very mean streak that lasts for decades. 14. Chevy Chase on Community.
I've said that to you before, but it's like, you can't really say that. Did you just say that writers writing anything negative is jealousy?
Chevy Chase is a legend of comedy. He was one of the original stars of Saturday Night Live and starred in classic movies like National Lampoon's Vacation. When he joined the cast of the sitcom Community, fans were excited to see him back on TV. He played a grumpy, rich old man named Pierce Hawthorne. But as it turns out, he was not just acting. The thing nobody tells you is that he was incredibly difficult to work with and often made racist and mean comments to his co-stars. He had a very public fight with the creator of the show, Dan Harmon, and he reportedly used a very offensive racial slur on the set. His behavior became so toxic that he was eventually forced to leave the show. Even years later, his former cast members have talked about how hard it was to be around him. He has a long history of fighting with people he works with, dating all the way back to the 70s. It seems that his fame gave him the idea that he could treat people however he wanted without any consequences. While he was mean with his words, the next actor on our list was accused of staging a whole crime just to get more attention and a better paycheck. 15. Ju C. Smollett-On. Empire.
I'm glad that Frank called the police. I'm glad that we reported it.
Empire was a huge drama with musical elements that felt like a modern-day soap opera. Ju C. Smollett was one of the breakout stars, playing a talented singer and songwriter. In 2019, he told the police a shocking story. He claimed that two men had attacked him in the middle of the night, shouted mean things at him, and put a rope around his neck. The world was outraged, and many people offered him support, but not all things are what they seem. After a deep investigation, the police found evidence that he had actually paid two brothers to stage the whole attack. They found a check he had written to them and video of them buying the supplies. To put it mildly, the police were not happy about having their time wasted. He was charged with lying to the police and was eventually found guilty. He lost his job on the show, and his career was essentially over. It was a bizarre case that many people still talk about today because of how much effort he put into the lie. His story was a massive media circus, but our next entry is much more somber, involving a tragic act of violence that changed a family forever. 16. Michael Jace on The Shield.
It seems to be the only organization I'm aware of currently that is doing so much to sort of...
Michael Jace was a character actor who appeared in many shows, including small roles in sitcoms and a big role in the police drama The Shield. He often played strong, quiet characters. But in 2014, something terrible happened at his home in Los Angeles. During an argument about their relationship, he took his wife's life in front of their two young children. You see, the man people saw on TV as a protector was actually a person capable of extreme violence. He called the police himself and waited for them to arrive. During the trial, it was revealed that he was angry because he thought she wanted to leave him. He was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 40 years to life in prison. It was a horrifying story that left the community in shock. The fact that his children were there to see it made it even more heartbreaking. It is a stark reminder that domestic violence can happen in any home, even those of the famous. This was a truly dark moment in TV history, but the next actor on our list also faced charges for domestic violence, showing a pattern of behavior that is all too common. 17. Chris Tavares on KC, Undercover KC.
So, are there any good vegetarian places you could recommend? I'd love to try one, but of course I'd hate to eat alone.
Undercover was a popular Disney Channel show starring Zendaya. Chris Tavares played a recurring character named Darian, who was a love interest for the main character. He was young, handsome, and seemed to be on his way to a great career. But in 2019, he was arrested for a very serious domestic violence incident. He was accused of pushing his girlfriend during an argument, which caused her to hit her head and suffer a major injury. He was charged with a felony and ended up spending time in jail. For a young actor who was working for a company like Disney, this was a career-ending move. He was quickly removed from the public eye, and his promising future vanished. It is another example of how one violent choice can ruin everything you have worked for. It also shows that the quote one characters we see on screen are often very different from the people playing them. While he was a young star, our next entry was a child actor from one of the most famous shows of the 80s who struggled with the law for many years. 18. Todd Bridges on Different Strokes.
You done a nice thing promising Mama you take care of us. But Arnold and me ain't gonna take no charity.
Different Strokes was a massive hit about two brothers from Harlem who are taken in by a rich businessman. Todd Bridges played Willis, the older brother, known for the catchphrase, "What you talking about, Willis?" But when the show ended, the young actors struggled to find work and stay out of trouble. Todd Bridges faced many years of legal issues, including being arrested for having a firearm and for an assault charge. At one point, he was even up for a very serious trial involving a shooting, though he was later found not guilty. He struggled with a heavy addiction to illegal substances for a long time, which led to many of his problems with the police. What many overlooked is that he eventually turned his life around. He became clean and wrote a book about his struggles, hoping to help others. He is one of the few on this list who managed to find a path back to a normal life, but his evil reputation stuck with him for a long time during his darkest years. His story has a bit of hope, but our next actor from Saved by the Bell had a much harder time escaping his reputation after a violent incident in a bar. 19. Dustin Diamond on Saved by the Bell.
To give them a hug and tell them how proud I am of what they've been doing, and ask for forgiveness for any kind of misunderstandings that may have come about by the book. And
Dustin Diamond played Screech on Saved by the Bell, the lovable nerd who was the butt of every joke. He played the character for over 10 years, including the spin-off shows. But as he grew up, he seemed to resent the character that made him famous. He wrote a book that said many mean things about his co-stars, which made him an outcast in the industry. But the thing nobody tells you is that his legal trouble was even worse than his bad attitude. In 2014, he was involved in a fight at a bar where he used a knife to stab a man. He claimed he was defending his girlfriend, but the jury did not fully agree. He was convicted and sent to jail for several months. He also famously released a very adult video that he later admitted was a huge mistake and used a stunt double. He spent the rest of his life trying to fix his image, but he sadly passed away in 2021. He will always be remembered as Screech, but his real life was full of much more conflict than the halls of Bayside High. From a teen nerd to a 70s teen heartthrob, our final actor shows how fame can lead to a total collapse of your finances and your reputation. 20. Willie Ames on 8 is Enough.
Honestly, you can make fun about me, you can make fun of my shows, you can do a lot of stuff. The guy's going after my family.
Willie Ames was a huge star in the 70s and 80s, appearing in 8 is Enough and later Charles in Charge. He was on the cover of every teen magazine and had millions of fans. But when the roles stopped coming, he did not handle it well. He began to struggle with illegal substances and spent all of his money. To put it mildly, his life became a complete disaster. He eventually went through a very public bankruptcy and even became homeless for a period of time. He was also known for having a very short temper and getting into fights. At his lowest point, he said he was ready to end it all. Like Todd Bridges, he eventually found a way to get healthy and started a new career working on cruise ships. It is a wild story of how someone can have everything and then lose it all because of bad choices and the fickle nature of Hollywood. He is now a long way from his days as a TV star, but he serves as a final example of how the people we admire on sitcoms are just humans with very real and sometimes very dark problems.